Did you work after you had 3 little girls?
Well, some people might say I didn't work, but I had my own daycare in my house. So I had between 5 and 8 children every day come to my house, and I took care of them. And it was a lot of fun because the 3 girls all had a playmate. And so they always looked forward to when their friends came every morning between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. And by 4:30 they were all gone. So that was my work for 6 years.
Did your 3 girls get along?
They got along as well as any siblings get along. Yeah, they had good moments and they had some bad moments, but that's to be expected.
When did you start teaching again, and what grade did you teach?
I started teaching again when your mother was 5, and I started teaching. I took over a first grade class, and then I went to K-5 after that.
While you were in North Carolina, you started to breed dogs. What made you start to breed dogs?
Well, we had a friend who had collies, and we really liked collies. And they had a female collie, and they were moving, and they really couldn't take her with them. So the agreement was that we could have her, but her first litter of pups, they were to have half, and we could keep half. And so that's what we did. She had, I think, 8 pups, 8 or 12 pups, I'm not sure exact count, but we kept half of them and sold them and took the other half to them.
How many years did you breed dogs?
About 4.
What did you like the most about breeding dogs?
The puppies were darling, but also it was sad when they had to leave.
What did you like the least about breeding dogs?
When we had to sell them and they had to leave us. Yeah.
Did you ever keep any of them? Like any of the
No,
puppies?
we never did.
No.
We never kept any of them.
Tell us about the day Nathan was born.
When Nathan came, let's see, I was teaching school at the time, and I came home from school, and it was a weekend, and I said to your grandfather, I said, I think we're going to have a baby this weekend. And we did, and he came, but on the way down to the delivery room, the doctor said, we're going to have to get this baby out quick because the cord is wrapped around his neck 3 times. So they used what they called forceps to pull him out. And he was born quite quickly. But the doctor that I had was a great doctor. He knew exactly what he was doing. A lot of times babies that they use forceps on. Today I think they use more like a suction thing. A lot of times the babies would have marks on their head or their face where they put the forceps. There wasn't a mark on Nathan at all. He really knew what he was doing.
Why did you leave North Carolina?
Well, again, the Lord closed the door and opened up the door for us. We wanted to come north because all our families were further north than what we were, and we wanted the grandchildren to be able to see their grandparents more. So when the Lord closed the door in North Carolina, he opened the door for us there in Maryland, and that was much closer, and so we moved to Glen Burnie, Maryland.
Tell us about the day Renata was born.
Well, the day Renata was born, again, I was teaching school, and she was overdue. I think all my babies were overdue. They liked to stay with me long. Anyways, they told me that I was to go down to Annapolis, where my hospital was, and have a test to make sure that all my enzymes and hormones and everything were right to put me into labor. And so the plan was that after I taught in the morning, we would go down, and your grandfather also had to get some parts for a bus. So we were going to go down, and I was going to have the test while he would go to wherever he had to go to get this part for the bus. And we had a VW bus at that time. So we got down there, and it was very congested and no place to park. So he said it's okay if I drop you off here. And I had to cross the street and go walking right into the hospital. And I told him, sure, it's fine. So I got across the street and started on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden I felt like everything was falling out of me. And I looked down, and I had a puddle of blood. And your dad, my husband was still at the signal light waiting for it to turn green, and he was watching me. And I looked at him and I said, you got to come, I need you. And so he had to go and find a place to park, and I was afraid to move. I really was afraid that the baby was going to fall out of me. And so when he came, he ran in and told them that I needed some help, and they came out with a wheelchair and took me in, and immediately took me up to the delivery floor, and they came in, and by that time, I mean, my clothes and everything was all bloody. I was a mess. And they, of course, right away tried to see if there was a heartbeat. And the nurse was looking all over my abdomen trying to find a heartbeat. They couldn't find one. And I really thought I lost the baby. And so they went out and they got, I don't know, he was my doctor, but it was a doctor, I guess, on the floor. And he came in and he took his stethoscope, and the heartbeat was way up here, way up under my rib cage. He said, there's a heartbeat. So she wasn't even in the birth canal. She was not down there at all. She was way up there. So he said, we're going to have to do a C-section on you, because he said, evidently your placenta has torn loose. So, and I had just, I think maybe 2 visits before, told the doctor, I don't want a C-section. Because a lot of people that were having babies, it seemed like everybody was having a C-section. And I told him, I said, I don't want to have a C-section. Well, guess what? God had other plans. I was having a C-section. So they prepped me, and in no time, I was on that table, and I had a baby. But they had to reach way up under to get her, because she was way up there. But she was healthy and fine. And so that was my experience. And like I told you before your mother came down here, after I had her, that's when I had the worst pain, because I had contractions for 8 hours after I had her. And I had rooming in with her, and I told him, I said, you have to take her to the nursery. I can't deal with her. I sent your grandfather home. I said, you go home. I don't want anybody in here, because my contractions were the worst I had with any of my other children. They were awful, because my incision made it compound. And then they would come in and press on my stomach so that you would get rid of some of the excess blood. And I thought I would literally go through the roof. It was awful. And I had a roommate in the hospital, and she had a regular delivery. And she said, if I have any more children, I'm having a C-section. I'm not going through this again. I looked at her and I said, I would have a regular delivery any day over this. I said, you don't know what you're talking about.